What is going on, YouTube? Welcome back to Fireside Rangers. I'm your host, Eric Wilson. Today by two unusual co-hosts, faces that we don't either haven't seen on here before or haven't come around that often. We got Anthony, we got Allie. Today, we're going to be doing a series recap, basically. The Rangers made it a quick one over the Washington Capitals. We swept for the first time since 2008. So the vibes here in Rangerstown, they are immaculate. And we pretty much have all week to get ready for round two. Before we even know who we're going to face and all that good stuff, we do want to dive back into the first four games of the postseason, talk about all the things that went right, the few things that we could have done a little bit better, but we'll get right on into that in just a moment. Before we do, make sure you like, subscribe, ring that bell so you don't miss notification. If you're watching us on Apple or Spotify, be sure to give us a 5-star review. Leave your thoughts on the series down in the comment section below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And lastly, be sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms at Fireside Rangers. But before we really get into it, Anthony, my good friend, how are you feeling about this series sweep?
I'm feeling great, man. It's always nice to get a sweep. The Rangers played some great hockey for 4 straight games, and I'm thrilled to be moving on to round 2 with no losses under the belt.
Yeah, it's a good feeling. Allie, welcome to Fireside Rangers. How are you feeling about that sweep?
I'm feeling great. As someone who just started getting into hockey, it's actually really fun that this is like one of the first years that I followed from start to finish. Well, not finished, not done yet, but from start to now to playoffs. So it's been fun to actually have like a New York team to be excited about. I don't have much of that in the football world.
But. Yeah, I know that the Giants are working on it over there, but luckily right now the Rangers happen to be doing something right. First team to clinch the playoffs, finish first overall in the NHL, and now we're the first team to advance to the second round. So let's talk about how we got here. How did the Rangers pull off a sweep? To me, I think there were a few very good players throughout the 4 games that we participated in. Obviously, Zibanejad, he led the team in points with 7. But at the end of the day, when I think of the MVP of this series, to me, it has to be Igor Shesterkin. He played his heart out every single game, did not have a single bad game. I think his best individual performance came in Game 3 when the Rangers picked up a 3-1 win. Unfortunately, he didn't reach any shutouts. He almost had a goal, but Igor Shesterkin pretty much shut the door on the Capitals, and he did not have a single bad moment except for that one little softie that he missed. But we'll forget about that one as we move forward. But Anthony, I don't know if you agree or not, but who's your MVP from the series? Who do you want to shout out here?
I mean, I think that you're right to say that Igor is the MVP. He was absolutely dominant throughout this series, which is what we come to expect of Igor Shesterkin in the postseason. But I'll give you my other MVP, Eric. You could probably guess. It's Peter Laviolette, man. He's not a player, but he's the most valuable person. I think that what he's done to this team, comparing their performance in this first round to their performance in last year's first round, it's a night and day difference. This roster is not any better than it was last year. It's mainly comprised of all of the same players. The major difference to me is Peter Laviolette being the head coach.
Yeah, Peter Laviolette is a mastermind on the bench right there. We've talked about it a million times how much you love him, Anthony. The night and day difference between last season with Gallant, just going from like a fringe playoff team out in the first round to first team to make it to the second round. So shout out to him as well. Allie, I know you're a big Igor fan. Are you going to ride with him, or do you have a different MVP?
Well, there's 2. I feel like Trocheck has actually been one of the best players this series so far. And Breadman Panarin, I feel like his performance this season in playoffs compared to last season in playoffs is so much better. And we finally, not finally got Panarin, but it's just nice to see him score. He was like scoreless last playoffs, was he not? He had no impact whatsoever.
He only had 2 assists in 7 games.
Night and day. So shout out Panarin, shout out Trocheck, and of course Igor. Those are like my big 3.
Yeah. Tony, when you said that I might know who you were going to bring up, at first I did think you were going to say Trocheck, and then you caught me off guard with the Laviolette. But also, shout out Panarin. During yesterday's pregame live stream, which ended up being like a feature-length film that we did on accident, we did talk about Panarin a little bit that I want to bring up again because he scored in Game 1, and then he took a couple games off until last night in Game 4. Mm-hmm. He was able to pick up a goal and an assist. And I had a lot of people in the stream, people DMing me on my socials saying that Panarin had one good game and then he fell off. He was not shooting it anymore, and he kind of looked like how he looked last playoffs. But the thing that I had to explain to the stream that I want to reiterate here is that in Games 2 and 3, the amount of penalties that the Rangers took was absolutely absurd. In Game 3, the Rangers had to go 6 for 6 on the penalty kill. a penalty kill in which Panarin is not on the ice. So to everyone who's saying Panarin didn't really shine that well as he did in the regular season throughout the first round, I do want you to note that his abilities were entirely hindered every time he was forced to sit on the bench while the team played defense. I think in the 2 games where he was able to flourish, he played phenomenally. He still had 3 points in 4 games, really 3 points in 2 games that he was actually able to do what he does. So, Anthony, how do you feel about Panarin?
I thought Panarin played great. I think you make a really good point there about him not having his normal time on ice due to all of the penalties. And when he is on the ice and when he is playing well, I mean, it's Artemi Panarin. He should be the MVP. He's the best that there is. And I thought his point output, his shot output was really nice. Obviously, in game 1, he put up the 7 shots on goal. And yeah, he had 0 the next game, but like you said, circumstances changed there, and I thought that he played great. Thought the second line looked really good. Obviously, Trocheck, as Ali mentioned, that's my boy, and I was really happy to see him bounce back after what I thought was a really sloppy game 1 performance, but for the rest of the series, he was excellent. So I think that second line in general played great, and I'll even give a shout out to the bottom 6, though, because I thought the depth of this team was the real key to victory.
Yeah, depth was the biggest thing, in my opinion. I know I saw that tweet earlier today from right before the playoffs started. ESPN posted their playoff predictions, and their bold take was that the Rangers would lose because our depth wouldn't be enough to stop the hungry, desperate Capitals. Well, this is why we don't let ESPN talk about hockey. So, but depth was definitely a huge thing. I think one of the most underrated players from the series that we've rarely talked about, Alexis Lafreniere. He went from last playoffs having 0 points in 7 games to right now after the first round. He's a point-per-game player. He didn't score any goals, but he had 4 assists, which is a big part of how Trocheck and Panarin were able to heat up and score a lot of goals there. So, Ali, as a new fan, you didn't really experience the beginning of Lafreniere's career where he was forced to play on like the 4th line and got no ice time. So to see him excel like he is right now is awesome for us. As a new fan, how are you feeling about him?
I enjoy watching him. I feel like it's weird to think that there was a point where he wasn't even on the ice. That's just not something that would have came across my head. But I do want to shout out someone who I know is new. He's a rookie this year who I feel like also kind of stood out in this series, especially game 1. My guy, Matt Rempe, who I love. I know he had a goal game 1. I know he was really crucial in that win. So he's just someone I want to shout out real quick.
Matt Rempe deserves all the shout outs in the world. He's receiving a lot of hate on social media right now because he never fought anyone throughout the series. That's a sick magazine picture. But at the end of the day, I think that's exactly what Rempe needed to do. He was the mastermind here that baited people for the entire regular season that he was in. So in the playoffs, Tom Wilson, Dylan McElrath, they just kept trying to nudge Rempe to drop the gloves, and he wouldn't do it. He was playing mind games with them the whole time, and I think that's exactly what he needed to do, and that's a big part of what destroyed the mentality of that Capitals locker room. They kept trying to have that big moment, a series momentum-shifting moment by fighting Matt Rempe, and he just wouldn't allow it, and everyone on social media is calling him like a little baby for not wanting to fight. But at the end of the day, his team's into the second round, and the Capitals aren't, so Tony, like, what's your analysis of Rempe's series? Like, would you want to have seen him fight, or are you kind of like in my boat where you think he was just playing mind games with them?
I'm in your boat. Mind games, and he did the right thing. He never really made any crucial errors or mistakes. There were times, I think, during the regular season where he would get into those fights or take really dumb penalties and put the Rangers into compromised positions. I didn't think that happened during the series. I thought he played consistent, and he looked like a rookie who's now got time under his belt and is more matured and ready for the pro game. So I think that we're seeing a lot of progress from Rempe, and every single game, it's like he's getting better and he's growing. And I think his potential is sky high, and he's already become a very high impact player for the Rangers very early on in his career. So you have to be excited about it.
I honestly don't even think there was a single low impact player throughout the series for the Rangers. I mean, the only thing
Goudreau played well, man. Even
Goudreau
well.
had a phenomenal series. Like, the only players that stick out to me are just like Braden Schneider, and that might be it. But I don't even have anything bad to say about him. He just was average, which is okay when the rest of your team is flourishing. We could sit here and shout out every single player. They all play phenomenally. The last thing that I want to talk about before we start to wrap up the episode is just a lot of this debate that I've been seeing going on in Rangers Twitter all day. Obviously, yes, we're all excited that we swept the Capitals. Big monumental moment. Haven't done that in over a decade. But a lot of Rangers Twitter is still unhappy about it just because of the way that things went down. Sure, we won 4 games straight, but a lot of people are saying the games were a lot closer than they needed to be. The Rangers took too many penalties, and a team like the Capitals, who is statistically the worst playoff team in NHL history, we should have blown them out of the water every single game. Now, I do agree that there probably does need to be a little critiquing there, specifically with the amount of penalties that we're taking. Got to be a little bit more careful. But I think overall, I don't have any complaints. The 5v5 really stepped up. Power play, penalty kill was phenomenal. He scored 2 shorthanded goals in 4 games. All 4 lines were cooking. The defensive pairs look solid. So, yeah, while there's minor tweaks, I don't really think there's anything to be that upset about. We definitely need to ramp up the intensity moving forward because chances are we'll be playing Carolina in round 2, and that series is going to be 10 times harder than this one. I still think we can beat them, but definitely a little bit more of a challenge. So I think tweaks need to be made, but to everyone that's saying that they're still upset after we pulled off the sweep, I don't know. I disagree with you, but Tony, how do you feel about that?
I don't know how you could be upset. I mean, we were talking about this before we started recording. Eric, you were saying that it was a little bit of an ugly sweep. It wasn't exactly the clean sweep in the series. I do disagree with you in the sense that you're right. There were mistakes in those games, and there were moments where, again, the Rangers were in compromised positions and found ways to prevail. But ultimately, if you take a look at what the Capitals did during the season, those were the games that they were winning. Like, they were in these ugly games that just happened to go their way, and that's the only reason that they made it into the postseason. We all know about their negative 30 goal differential, worst playoff team of all time. But the reason that they were in the playoffs is because they did hang around in games like that, and they got ugly wins. So the fact that the Rangers were getting ugly wins isn't, to me, something to say wrong about the Rangers. It's more just the style of play from the Capitals. They found a way to prevail through it and get the sweep. So I had like a different perspective on that when you said that, Eric, when you were, kind of saying it wasn't the clean sweep. I thought that it was. It's just the nature of the game playing against the Capitals. That's the way that they play. The Rangers actually figured out how to counteract that and get those 4 straight wins rather than even dropping one of those. Because the Capitals, if you look, had a lot of 1-goal wins during the season where they just barely scraped by and they got some wins. Again, that ties into their goal differential. And maybe, no, the Rangers didn't drop a touchdown on them at any point or blow them out of the water, but they don't need to. They got the wins, and they did it in the fashion necessary. And again, according to the playing style to counteract what the Capitals like to do.
Mm-hmm. I like how you said how the Rangers adjusted to their play, because you look at it this regular season, the Rangers set the franchise record for most comeback wins in history. Of the 4 games in the series, 2 of them, I think, maybe even 3, were comeback wins where the Capitals scored early on. They dominated in the first half of the first period until something changed. The Rangers just clicked, figured out what it was Washington was doing, and then dominated the rest of the game anyway. But Allie, before we wrap it up, your overall thoughts on the series moving into round 2, what would you change, if anything?
Well, just want to piggyback on the conversation from before. A win is a win. So I don't know why you're going to be upset. A win is a win. Take it. That's it. I'm excited for round 2 only because my last experience watching the Rangers, it was round 1 against the Devils, and then they got knocked out, and it was really
Don't talk about that.
because they should have won. They should have won, and they didn't. So I'm happy to see them actually advance. I'm excited to see kind of a better level of competition because from what I know about the Caps, this was supposed to be a win. They were supposed to win regardless. That's it. But I want to see better competition. I'm excited to maybe see a little more scrappiness. That's kind of my thing. But yeah, nothing I would change. I know they do have to make some changes. I was reading an article earlier where they were talking about how, yes, like they're a good team, but obviously they do have to make a lot of changes. Like they're not going to say they played bad, but they didn't play the best hockey that they could play. So ready to see that.
Yeah, there's always room for improvement, even if you're playing as perfect as possible. And trust me, Allie, as the playoffs advance, the intensity, the grittiness, the scrappiness, it's going to intensify. Speaking of the second round, again, Rangers still don't know who they're going to be playing in that second round. It's either going to be the Carolina Hurricanes or the New York Islanders. Canes, which have a 3-1 series lead over the Islanders. They play tomorrow. So if you really want to scout our potential opponent. Check out that game tomorrow. I'm sure we'll be doing something about that on the channel tomorrow. But that about wraps up our series recap of the Rangers sweep over the Washington Capitals. What an incredible series. And we had a great time following along the entire thing with you guys. So if you want to stay involved with more Rangers content as the playoffs progress, make sure you like, subscribe, ring that bell so you don't miss notification. If you're watching us on Apple or Spotify, be sure to give us a 5-star review. Leave your thoughts down in the comment section below, anything that we might have missed during this recap and discussion. Lastly, be sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms at Fireside Rangers. Have a good one, and let's go Rangers.